right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the FearCast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. So thank you all for joining me for the podcast. So while this is typically a question and answer based podcast where you can go over to FearCastPodcast.com and you can send me questions about treatment and ERP and what ACT is and how to support someone with OCD and how to what's the difference between OCD and generalized anxiety disorders. Any questions that you might have, I would love to hear them and answer them, or just to talk about them, because inevitably, if you are struggling with this, someone else is somewhere else in the world. So for today's episode, this is going to be another installment in the anxiety in the arts series that I've been doing. So this is the last that I had pre-recorded from the first batch. I'm so appreciative of the people who have been willing to share their stories and to be on the show to talk about their experience with anxiety, how it has impacted their ability to do art, how it has affected or informed their art in and of itself. And that's really what I wanted to do, is to put out people's stories, that people can be anxious and put out great art and still be artists and pursue their passions and dreams throughout and despite anxiety. So while this is the last in the series that I have thus far, if you are someone in the arts community doing anything from visual arts to music to sound design to dance to theater to to any type of art out there, I would love to hear from you if you're willing to share your story about how anxiety has impacted you and how you have maybe used anxiety or use your art to help with your anxiety, or how your art has made you anxious. I don't know. It can be anything, but I'd love to hear your story and to share that. If you'd be willing to share your story for another round of these episodes, go over to FearCastPodcast.com and send me a message over there. You can also find me over at Instagram. I am FearCast Podcast over there, and you can send me a message, and I'd be more than happy to try to arrange something and hear your story. So for today's episode, this is a rather long episode. I apologize for that. But I interviewed Noel Dumont, so I'll tell you a little bit about her in a moment. So this was recorded in two parts. I'll have a little section in the middle that will just kind of segue between the two. We just kind of ran out of time. But I really liked this conversation for a number of reasons. One, this was the first episode that I actually recorded for this series, and it was great to be able to hear from Noel, to learn about her story, how anxiety is impacting her. It was also, throughout this episode, me trying to figure out what my role was as the interviewer for this series. I know that sounds odd that I wouldn't have that just all together from the start, but there can be this element of putting together a series and getting into it, and this series kind of figuring itself out. So I was kind of, my own anxiety, I suppose, was trying to figure out, what role do I have in this as the interviewer? Am I just putting out a story, or am I intervening where I'm hearing someone's anxiety? And I kind of tiptoe back and forth between that. It was a unique experience for me to try to figure out what my role was throughout this. But I really appreciate Noel for being candid and open about her struggles with anxiety. And what I love about the series is that I didn't really want to just have people on who are who have gone through the depths of it and have emerged on the other end a beautiful butterfly and everything's great. Is that some people are still struggling, and some people are still kind of in the middle of it and having success, but still having some obstacles in the way. Noel was kind of talking about that, where she's had a lot of success and she's kind of gone through some difficult times and is working on re-emerging and still has some anxiety rearing its ugly head. So I think that those stories are also certainly valid, but also important to validate someone's experience, perhaps your experience if you're listening to this. So Just as I get into this, I'll say a little bit about Noel. So she is a multi-talented singer located in Los Angeles, and has been featured on a huge range of different types of genres as a singer, as a choral member. But she's kind of pushing herself forward as a solo artist, and you can check her out. I'm going to put a couple of links up about her on the episode page over at FearCastPodcast.com, and you can check a little bit about or look up and learn a little bit about Noel yourself. So without further ado, here's my interview with Noel Dumont. All right, Noel, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast today. We look forward to hearing a little bit more about you and your story with anxiety and how it's been affecting your art career, your singing career, I should say.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you. Of
course. Well, I've known Noel for a very long time, mostly in high school, and then onward towards just a Facebook friendship, as most friends tend to go. And I've seen your career kind of move around and doing things and having albums. But I'd love to find out just if you could start with just telling myself and the listeners just a little bit about you, how your career has started, and where that has, I guess, where it started and where it's going.
Well, sure. I started being interested in singing in middle school when I was able to join the choir, and I quickly grew very quickly. Once I started learning how to sing, and I started doing a lot of things as a kid. I don't know if you remember, I recorded an album when I was in high school.
Yes, I do.
So I was doing a lot of things, but I was hoping to have a singing career by the time I graduated high school, because I had a distorted idea that if I didn't become a professional singer as a kid when I was under 18, then I wouldn't have any chance or, success as an adult, because every other singer in the world is an adult, and I'm special because I'm a kid. But lo and behold, I graduated high school and didn't have a singing career, and so I felt like I had missed my chance. And even though I went to Biola University for a vocal voice performance degree, I still felt like I'd missed my chance and given up on what I could have had a singing career. I didn't end up completing that degree because of anxiety and depression. School was always difficult for me, even though I got great grades. But when I decided to ungive up on my singing when I moved to London. I had previously moved to France with my ex, and we got a business degree there. And then we moved to London so he could go to London Business School. And I started feeling really antsy, and internally I was starting to feel like I would explode, because I felt like I needed a musical outlet and I didn't have any, and I hadn't been doing any singing for years. And I had to do something or my body would nope out on me or something. It was very strange. I was have to sing. I don't know. I feel like I'm going crazy. And so I found a church to join that would let me sing in their worship bands, and that was nice. But I wanted more. I needed more. And then randomly, a classmate of my ex, who knew I liked to sing, was like, hey, how would you like to sing in the Royal Albert Hall? And I was like, excuse me? She said, yeah, my mom's connected with a choir who's looking to beef up their numbers for a performance at the Royal Albert Hall. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Yes. And so I did it with her. And turns out this concert that they're beefing up their choir numbers for was featuring Andrea Bocelli.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. As is whatever. Cool. So my first foray, whatever.
Yeah, that works. Foray.
My first venture back into music was a performance with Andrea Bocelli in the Royal Albert Hall. And I was like, wow, this is pretty great. Yeah, I like this choir. So I didn't have to audition for them because they were just looking to beef up numbers. But after we did this performance, I was like, I think I want to audition for them and be part of this choir. So I did, and I got in. And they're the official choir of the Royal Albert Hall. And so I sang in Royal Albert Hall probably 20 times over the next few years, which was really, really cool. And it was a classical choir, and it wasn't paid or anything, but it was still an outlet that I needed. And from there, one of the performances that I did with them was a big outdoor performance in Hyde Park. It was called Proms in the Park, and they do it every year at the end of a series of performances that they do through the summer of classical concerts. And it was in front of 40,000 people, which was insane and amazing. Wow. And loved it. But one of the groups that was also singing in that show was the London Community Gospel Choir. And I've always had a love for gospel music. When I was in 8th grade, I started my own gospel choir at my middle school. And my teacher let us perform in the concerts and stuff, and it was really fun. And I just
that's amazing.
My heart comes alive with the soul of gospel music.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I got to get gospel in my life again. I was trying to chat them up backstage or whatever. And so I got inspired to try to get involved in the gospel choir when I was in London. And I got involved with UGCY, which is University Gospel Choir of the Year, and they put together a big competition for university gospel choirs in the UK every year, but they also have a house choir, and I was interested in getting involved in that. They were going to do a record-breaking attempt at a mall that I signed up for, and they had asked in the participant Facebook group if anyone would be available to join them for a TV news appearance to promote this record-breaking attempt. And I was available to do it, so I did it. It was really fun. All of a sudden, I'm on British news singing "Oh Happy Day" with this gospel choir. And after we did that, we did the record-breaking attempt. Didn't break the record that time, but I got a message soon after saying, hey, since you did the news appearance, would you be interested in joining us as the backing choir on the X Factor UK live shows? And I was like, excuse me? Yes, very much yes. Thank you, yes. And so all of a sudden now I'm in this gospel choir on live TV on the X Factor UK, doing gospel bounce behind contestants on the literal X Factor show that's millions of people watch. And I'm all of a sudden living this dream. And I wasn't auditioning for any of this. I was just trying to get involved, in groups and stuff. And doors were opening for me. And it was so much fun. Oh my gosh. And I was like, yes. I love performing. This is great. And there was one moment a year or two into the X Factor thing that I was on stage during the live show doing my gospel bounce with the choir in the back. And I thought to myself, I could have sung the song better than the contestant. And I was like, oh, wait, if I'm in the backing choir thinking I can sing better than the contestant on the show, I probably need to do something about this. And so I found a vocal coach through the gospel choir who really has made one of the biggest impacts on my life. She not only is an amazing singer, but she's an amazing coach and cheerleader, and she started pushing me to do open mics. And she helped me find my sound and my niche as a singer, which was always a big thing for me. I always loved to sing, but I never knew what to sing or, what genre or what songs. And that was always a tripping point for me. But she helped me discover that I really jazz and soul really suit me. And that was so important in my journey because I can't, I can sing lots of genres well, but what really lights my heart on fire is this certain thing. And discovering that was huge for me. So I started doing open mics in London, and randomly, the bar manager approaches me at this place that I do open mic at regularly. And he says, hey, we're thinking of starting a Sunday jazz afternoon event here at the bar, and I think your voice would be perfect for it. If you can find live accompaniment, we will pay you to sing for 3 hours. But, you can't use a backing track. It needs to be live. But if you can find someone to accompany you live, like, we'll pay you to sing. And so I'm like, excuse me, I'll be right back while I find someone to accompany me real quick. And I found a pianist, and we had a couple rehearsals, and all of a sudden I had my first paid gig.
Wow.
And it was in my genre. It was jazz. It was soul. It was, and that's what I always knew, that like I always wanted to be a professional singer. Like, getting paid for one gig is like, I can call myself a professional now, right? And I didn't hustle for it. Like, I was just like trying to, fulfill my musical needs, really. And these doors were opening for me, which was amazing. Now, the problem with my situation is that with my ex, we didn't stay put for very long in any one place. So right as things are starting to kick off in London, I, started these jazz gigs and started getting paid. I signed up with an artist management company who helped me record a couple songs and do some performances, which was really, really awesome. We moved to Dublin because he got a job at Facebook in Dublin. And so all of a sudden things are ramping up, and then I have to go.
Right.
Okay, cool. So I have to start over again. So, okay, now we're in Dublin. I got to get my now that I have the experience of, doing my own jazz gigs, like, hopefully I can make something happen. I can say I've done it,
Right. Have a little bit of that grounding, or that like have a little bit of that resume behind you to kind of give you that legitimacy in a sense.
Yeah. And I did some, my main thing was that, like, I struggled a lot with, and I still struggle with, like, making my own things happen. So most of what I've done a lot of really cool stuff that I loved, but it was someone else's choir, someone else's group, I guess me doing the open mics was me doing something, but I had, a great cheerleader behind me to push me to do it. Someone else approached me about my first paid gig. It wasn't me going like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, the hustle is very scary for me. And so I'm really fortunate that most of the stuff that I've been able to do, has come in a way that, is easier for me to take on, I guess, because if it's someone else's project, I'm really confident in coming alongside and like making, being awesome and being a part of it or whatever. But as soon as like I'm making the thing, I start worrying about like, oh, am I doing the right things? Like, all this stuff. And like my worry and like overthinking of everything just leaves me exhausted and frustrated, and I avoid the whole thing, altogether. So I end up in situations where like, okay, I could try and push really hard to like make things happen, or I could hope something else falls in my lap, like it has. But that feels like it's cheating. But then, anyway, I'm kind of going off track a little bit. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I certainly I could imagine that, things thus far in your story, it's like things have just kind of clicked into place, have kind of, for the most part, right? They've kind of fallen into place. But once the hustle starts to show up, or the need to advocate for yourself and put your own projects together, or audition in a sense, that's kind of where it gets a little bit more difficult and a little bit more. Was it a sense of anxiety? Was it a sense of kind of motivation to do it? A sense of kind of perfection of what the project was going to look like? What did it seem like was the obstacle, or what were the obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I've always struggled with perfectionism. I'm sensitive to being corrected. And, if I do something wrong and someone's like, oh, it really should have been done this way, then I'm really hard on myself. Or like if I put a lot of effort into something and it turns out like I should have done it another way, I'm really hard on myself. And I'm, oh man, I shouldn't have done, whatever. And knowing how easy it is for me to beat myself up, I get scared of putting myself in situations where that risk is there. Like I'll audition for something. But when it comes to like, one thing I've always wanted to do, I mean, I had the CD in high school that I did, but it wasn't my, heart's genre. And it, you can really hear it's just a girl singing songs. I'm not singing from my heart. And I really I've always wanted to do an album of my own music. That's really me and really, is a genre and style that suits me. But that means original music. Okay, well, sitting down writing music, oh my God, like if it's not great, then it's terrible. And, the stress of like making good music is just like, just thinking about it is just like stressing me out, just thinking about it, okay, well then like maybe I should find someone to collaborate with. Oh, that means like going out and like finding the right person. But what if I connect with someone and it's not the right person and doesn't turn out the way I like? Then I'm going to be hard on myself and be like, oh, that was so much wasted time and I have to find someone else and I'm going to be tired from this effort now. And, it like, I build this whole thing up as everything's a big deal, right. Capital B, capital D. And I just get tired thinking about it. And I have a lot of trouble getting started on stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes to like auditioning for something else, whatever, like I'll audition for the choir, normally I impress myself with my own audition. Like I get really excited about it. But that's someone else's project that I can jump in on, and I don't have the responsibility. If it goes bad, I'm not going to be hard on myself because they're the ones that did the things that weren't right, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off of me. Right. So I've been in lots of, with the choirs and stuff. And when I was in Dublin, I did some music videos for, there was a guy he had an ad on Star Now, and he was looking for a singer to sing a couple songs that he wrote. They're pop ballad duets, and also do music videos for them. And I was like, okay, I'm looking to get involved in music. I'll, do like pop ballads, sounds fun or whatever. And so I did it. It was fun. And then he did a few more songs and music videos with me, which is cool. And I've got music videos with thousands of views on YouTube, but they're, not my genre. Also, they were someone else's project that I jumped in on.
Right.
I was also able to get a band started in Dublin, but it was me applying for an ad looking for a jazz singer. I was like, hey, I'm a jazz singer. I did this stuff in London. And then it ends up being like a booking agent, and he like pulled together band members for me. I got a keyboardist and a double bassist and a drummer, and he named us the Noel Dumont Quartet and got us a weekly jazz gig for brunch at an Italian restaurant that I did for like a year and a half with them, paid. It was awesome, but it was someone else put the band together for me. Someone else got me the gig,
Right. Gosh,
although through that, I got approached by another place saying, hey, do you want to gig at our place? And so things were coming from that, but I didn't hustle for that. I just applied to the ad, So that was another cool thing that I did, that like, I didn't do the hustle for it really. I would just like, it's like, hey, me. And then like things happened,
Right. It's gosh, one of the things I'm hearing in this is like, when you do apply, when you put yourself out there, things do work pretty well. But like with the idea of it, putting together a project really for yourself and the things that you really want to do, or things that feel really special to you, that's when that anxiety starts to kick up, and that perfection starts to it starts to limit you. You said kind of what I call the magic words within anxiety is "what if," right? You're like, oh man, okay, well I could go out there and I could set up collaborate with this person, but what if it's not great, or the songs aren't perfect, or the collaboration is just a waste of time, right? Oh my gosh. How else did you see, or how have you seen kind of your own anxieties impacting the drive, or impacting your career?
Well, I mean, there's that.
Sure.
And there's also, like, I've been procrastinating on trying to get things moving now that I'm back here in LA. Like, I would love to start gigging again. I really miss it. I'm doing the karaoke thing right now, which is like kind of the best I can do. But I keep going, I really should like try to find, musicians, to accompany me, and then like start seeing if I, can get in on, see if there's a restaurant I can sing in the corner of or something. But okay, well, LA is really big, and it's bigger than, like it's not like kind of compacted like other places that I've lived. And so I'd have to make sure that the musician kind of lives close enough to me so that like we can rehearse easily enough. Okay. And then I have to make sure that they're, really good. So I should like have auditions and stuff, because I've had musicians in the past that were good, but like not really at the level that I would really love. Okay. And so, so because LA is big, you're like, okay, this makes it a little more complicated to find someone. And then like, oh, the scene in LA, like there isn't just live music everywhere. And so how would I would have to like, really hustle to like, try to get in on good side of like someone in a restaurant or something, or like, try to network more to like see if I can get in. But like, just the scene is harder, and it's going to be harder. And oh man, I'm tired now. And so I'm making everything, every step is heavy.
Right.
And every step feels very heavy. And it's not just like, oh, I want to do this. Let's do this. It's like, oh man, step one is like, oh, step two is going to be like, and step three is going to be like, And so I haven't, I've been back technically since July, August, and I haven't really taken steps. And I'm sitting here really, really aching to sing. And, it's not a matter of I don't want it bad anaugh. And that's hard too, when people are like, well, if you wanted it bad enough, you would make it happen. Well, anxiety has a way of, like not caring how much you want things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's rough. And then that, it's hard to, kind of sit with that. Like, oh, if I did, maybe I don't want it bad enough, but I do. I want it so bad.
Yeah, you can kind of question yourself that, when anxiety gets in the way, or gives us, kind of feeds us those lines that it's not going to work, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be, excessively hard. You just go, I don't want to face those things. But then, in a backwards way, anxiety pops in, as you said, like maybe you're questioning yourself, maybe you don't want it enough, right? Yeah.
But I know that's not true. I know I want, like, my best moments in my life are moments on stage. I know how much I need it in my life. And I like, I'm doing the karaoke thing, and it's not the same. It's not the same at all.
Right.
I mean, it's better than nothing, but I really miss dressing up and having my own set list, and having my, my musicians with me, and getting that paycheck, and feeling like, I can bring something to the table that people want, and I love to do it, And I know I can do it. I've done it in multiple countries, multiple times, in multiple situations, at multiple places. And, doing it all over again.
Right.
Is
feels like an obstacle.
It's an obstacle.
With all, I mean, it sounds like you've got all this evidence you've kind of lined up. I'm curious, how have family and friends supported you throughout kind of your career. How have they helped? And are there some ways in which they've been unhelpful, especially when your anxiety starts kicking in?
Well, when I got my first gig in London, my family and friends were all still here in LA. I was just with my ex, my husband at the time, and he was encouraging, but I didn't really have a circle around me. Like I would post on Facebook, people would be like, "So proud of you, that's so great, go on." Like I had cheerleaders online and stuff, but I didn't have people to go to my gigs. I didn't have people to be my in-person cheerleaders. The best performance that I did, and is still my most favorite life moment, was the showcase performance I did in London through the artist management company that I joined. And it was at Bush Hall, and they had put out a red carpet and everything. It was like this huge event. And it was me and 3 other artists who were in this management company. And then the headliner, who's my vocal coach, who's amazing. But everyone else there, the other, artists who were singing, they had all their aunties and grandmas and cousins and friends and family there in the audience. And I had my husband and his laser tag friend in the audience for me. I had 2 people in the audience, and everyone else had at least 10 people, at least. And the audience was filled with everyone else's friends and family. And that was, I love to sing, and that's what the situation was. I lived across the world from my friends and family, and I was inviting my work colleagues and stuff. I was working at a tech company at the time. I was inviting them, but busy, sorry, they don't care enough.
Yeah,
they're not gonna come. They don't care.
Right.
So I had my husband and his laser tag friends in the audience, which I was so happy about, but also it did feel tough to know everyone else got to have their grandmas and aunties and cousins there, But by the end of it, I will say it was my favorite life moment, because I got a standing ovation from all of their grandmas and aunties, and I just
you'll take it.
So great.
That's
it was
amazing.
The best. They were all my family and friends afterwards. But doing all the things I did, my gigs and things like that, my ex would come sometimes. He wouldn't come to my choir performances, but he would often come to my jazz gigs. And I might have a friend or 2 who would come, sometimes, but it was, my family was always supportive, but they weren't there. They physically couldn't be there, Yeah,
that makes it incredibly difficult. Did getting the support, or how was getting the support online, kind of, I'll ask it this way: Did having the support online kind of boost you up, or was there an element that it didn't feel as motivating, or it didn't feel as effective for you?
Both.
Okay.
So, it's easy online to be like, "Oh, I would be there if I could." Would they actually? I don't know. I mean, I know my mom would. When she was still, she would comment on everything, be like, "I would be there if I could," and I knew she would. But other people, it's really easy to say they would, but would they actually? Is a question that I would ask. And I was still thankful for them to say it, whether it was true or not. But knowing that there's a difference between saying you would and then actually doing it if you could, was something that I battled a little bit. But I think also, there was a period of time that I was trying to audition for those, for the big shows. I auditioned for X Factor, I auditioned for The Voice, I auditioned for another one, Open Mic UK, and I was posting about it. And after those, I had so many comments, but you can do it, you can be so great. There was an outpouring of support online that, with well wishes and stuff like that, that I was really surprised at how many people were commenting and encouraging me. And that that was really helpful for me, in terms of like, hey, a lot of people do really believe in me. That's amazing. And that did help boost me up. I did quickly realize that, for anxiety reasons, those like big show auditions are not for me. It's just so stressful, and just like knowing that like everyone else is, trying for it, and it's this big deal show or whatever, and like waiting hours for your audition. It's just like, I hate, like, oh, my body just like flips out. It's just like, yeah, it's cool, but this isn't fun for me. I'll audition for a choir and like respond to an ad online for a jazz singer, but I'm not going to line up for X Factor anymore. This is too much. It's too stressful. Like my body just is so uneasy, and
Were there some things that you tried to do to help with some of those nerves? Was there any advice that you got from some of your friends or coaches to help deal with those nerves waiting for the auditions?
Your typical, like, all you can do is your best, and, share your gift with them. Don't put the pressure on yourself to like be better than anyone else. All you're doing is sharing your gift, and if your gift is right for them, then it'll be, and if it's not, then it won't be. But at the end of the day, you're waiting around for an audition with like a whole bunch of other people, and they all want the same thing you do, and it's just stress. It's just too stressful. It's too much. Did
those what ifs start creeping in?
Those what ifs, and also just like feeling the tension in the atmosphere with everyone else being nervous around you too, and like, oh man, it's I don't like the way my body feels in auditions like that. It just, I just don't like it. I don't want to put my body through that anymore. Right. I did a few of them. I got through the second round for Open Mic UK, and then I was so nervous for the second rounds, like I didn't perform well, and I was just realizing that I'm not having fun. And that's the real thing. Like, I'm doing this because it's fun and it fulfills me. And if something I'm doing is not fun and is not fulfilling me, I don't want to do that. That's kind of not what I'm going for here.
Right. Did that lead towards a shift in how you wanted to be focusing your energy and focusing your career?
I think so. I mean, for the time that I was auditioning for those things, it was like, it makes sense to like audition for these things because, exposure and, experience and practice and, this kind of thing. But the thing with these things, it's like, it's kind of audition after audition after audition after audition after audition for the same thing. Like you audition for X Factor to get through the next round, and then you audition again, get through the next round, and then you audition for the next round. And it's just like constant, it's not like auditioning to get into a group or to like do a specific project and then you're good. It's like, it doesn't end. It's like, it's constant and it doesn't stop. And so, once you get through the next round, you're going to have to do it again soon, like to continue to, what was the question?
Well, I suppose I can ask a different question. I mean, kind of with the lifelong of anxiety and just kind of that feeling that you get and all those what ifs that come and impact you. Have you tried to do anything or have you tried to do any therapy or any other things to help with that anxiety?
Yes. So, when it comes to those like auditions, I just decided like that's not for me. I still occasionally get stage fright, but mostly when it's my first time singing somewhere. But I also know that once I'm singing, I'm feeling good. And so I always keep that in mind, is that like if I'm nervous getting up there, like I know that I'm gonna feel good up there once I like get comfortable and stuff. And like knowing that helps me, get through that. And I don't let stage fright stop me. Just because I know how good it feels once I'm in my elements.
You kind of know your pattern with it, right?
Yeah. And I know I can bring it. I know that I can deliver. I know that I can delight an audience. Mm-hmm. That's not a question. It's just the new environments normally is like,
What seems
I'm always nervous with the new environment.
What seems frightening about the new environment?
It's just not knowing what to expect. What are the people going to be like? What's the sound going to be like? What's the reception going to be? I just not knowing exactly what to expect, as always, just in life in general. Like trying new things can be very difficult for me because unless I've got an instruction manual or whatever to like prepare and like, okay, this is exactly what to expect so I can go in confidently. Like there's so many what ifs and what's going to happen and so many unknowns. Like the unknowns scare me, really. Right. But when I know what to expect, then I'm okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah, those what ifs can be a huge obstacle for people. Just and inevitably our brain is going to fill in the worst case scenario for for not knowing what's going to happen. How have you tried to combat those that worst case scenario or those what ifs?
Well, it depends on what it is.
Okay.
I try to remind myself of how things went down last time. Last time it was fine. Sometimes last time it wasn't fine. And so I'll just completely avoid the thing because I'm like, well, I learned from last time that it was terrible. So let's not do it at all. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I've got a lot of avoidance because I get scared. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to expect. This is too much for me. The risk of something going wrong and me being hard on myself and like having to fight that then is too strong, and I'd rather avoid it, which is really frustrating for me, honestly. I have a great therapist right now who I had a session last night, and we're going to start to try to tackle like a lot of that, basically, like my avoidance on things because of my fear. Because I'm limiting myself. I know I've got so much more to offer and bring and do in the world. And I'm literally stopping myself because of that. And it upsets me.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not living anywhere near my full potential. And that makes me mad. But also I don't want to go into stuff and end up, crushing myself because something went wrong or, because I'm so hard on myself when things don't go well. And, I get so scared at well, a life not, beating myself up.
Yeah. Even
if I don't experience all the great things, at least is more peaceful. Like, there's no life to live though, right? So anyway, we're going to start trying to work on it because it's an internal war, and it's not a fun one to fight, and I shouldn't need to fight it. I don't want to fight it anymore.
Right. It sounds like that that inner critique is strong for you.
It's very, very strong. It's very strong. So like trying to learn coping mechanisms when things don't go right, and I think learning some better self-love and self-compassion is something I've been trying to work on a lot, and is kind of a really long journey,
Thus far for you, how has self-compassion come out, or what does self-compassion look like for you?
Good question. Just trying to go easy on myself. Trying to remind myself that I'm human, and that expecting perfection is unrealistic. For anyone, I would not expect perfection from anyone else. Why do I expect perfection from myself?
Right.
Like, why am I so special to be so perfect? Okay, I'm special, but I'm not that special. Yeah, I think just trying to give myself grace, which is hard. Yeah. It's really hard. I'm not very good at it. I am, I can offer grace abundantly to anyone else, like to a fault. I end up, not, I probably shouldn't offer grace as much as I do to people, but then I offer zero grace to myself, which thinking about that and realizing that's what I'm doing, I think was the first step with wow, that's really not fair. I wouldn't do that to anyone else.
Right.
That's really ridiculous, right? How ridiculous is that? Why do I put myself through this?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Why do I put myself through this? It's not fair. It wouldn't be fair to anyone to expect half of what I expect of myself, honestly.
Right. It can feel hard to give that to ourselves and to grant ourselves that permission to be human, that permission to not be perfect. Though we do that for other people, it seems like there's that double standard that anxiety gives us, where everybody else is deserving, whereas I'm undeserving, and I need to work for it, whereas other people they can just have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to remind myself I'm human. I expecting perfection is unrealistic. But it's easier, it's easier to say than to internalize. Internalizing is a whole other thing.
Exactly. I might jump into the conversation right now in editing it, so who knows in terms of the transition. But no, I've been thinking a lot about what we were talking about last week. I know today we're going to kind of focus more on kind of how ADHD as well has impacted your art or your music career. But yeah, I was thinking about how it seems like you get overwhelmed with, and maybe I'll finish the sentence first. It seems like you get overwhelmed with this, those what ifs about, what's going to happen if I get to the audition? What's going to happen if I put this band together? What's going to happen if these, what are these people going to think about me? And kind of it can feel overwhelming, and kind of to the point about the noping out. Sometimes people will nope out because it's tough to go through each and every scenario, to figure each and every one of them out, to give yourself enough reassurance that everything is going to be okay. We just go, that's too much work. F that noise. I'm out. Mm-hmm. And we just don't do it. Right. Mm-hmm. How are you at reading the future? What's your stats on crystal ball reading the future?
It depends. Over the years, I've figured out the ways in which my brain and body tend to react to certain things, and I can kind of guarantee that they, things will, if I get overwhelmed, I'm gonna shut down. Mm-hmm. If I am in a situation where I have to advocate for myself a lot, mm-hmm. I'm gonna start getting anxious and not freak out, but it's gonna be difficult for me. Mm-hmm. If I'm approaching a project that is complex, I'm gonna have problems. Making that project happen, one step at a time. Even if I plan it all out, there's so many steps, and just no, and I can't just look at one step and forget the rest. It's I see too much of the big picture, and the big picture overwhelms me, sort of thing. I think that's one of my big problems is that, yeah, I like to create the big picture, and then I let the big picture scare me, I guess. So even if the big picture isn't actually scary, if it's complex, if it's going to take a long time, if it's going to be difficult, mm-hmm. If it's going to be something I haven't done before, mm-hmm. Yeah, there are odds that I'm going to have troubles.
Okay. Well, has there been anything you've tried to help with that, or to work on it, or to? No, I'll leave it broad, and then I'll ask specific questions. But have you found anything that has helped?
Well, understanding the way my brain works has helped a lot. Mm-hmm. Before I'm I have these issues. Why do I have these issues? I shouldn't have these issues. I should just like try to push through them or accept that they're my issues and avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get like anxious that like, you know, I'm not, you know, that these are things I have to deal with, where it seems like other normal people don't have to deal with them the same way. That in itself has been helpful, like just like a self-acceptance sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them has to do with my like ADHD diagnosis, and like understanding, oh, this isn't a character flaw that I just need to like get over or
mm-hmm.
figure out, like this is actually something, you know, in my brain that's like making me do this, and understanding that I can have grace with myself and figure out alternative solutions sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really helped a lot. There's one situation that I think is a good example of just sort of going back to like, what have I tried? When I lived in Austin, my ex and I, I wanted to do a like a promotional video of me singing and my band so that I could try to get wedding gigs. And my ex is really great at like project planning and like, you know, sort of making things happen and like all that stuff. So he's like, I'll be the project manager, you know, like I'll help you figure all this out, and I'll like make sure, you know, like I'll manage it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, great, awesome. So he like put together this like spreadsheet of like, what are the steps to make this video happen? Ding, 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 ding. And like, how do we go about doing it? What things have to happen before these things, before
mm-hmm.
we can do this thing? What can we do at the same time? And it was very beautifully planned out. And he was like brilliant at managing all of it. And we did end up doing the video,
mm-hmm.
and it's cool and awesome. But oh man, even having like a dedicated project manager who like planned it all out, made sure everything happened,
mm-hmm.
you know, was there on the day to make sure everyone was in line and
mm-hmm.
everything, you know, was taken care of. Like the anxiety was outrageous. Just like, it was so much, you know, because it was pretty complex and there were a lot of moving pieces
mm-hmm.
and other people involved. And even though someone else was dealing with it, like it was something I was involved in, that I was just like watching the complexity happen, and I'm part of it. And I had a tough time through that whole thing. And I really wanted to just like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much, even though someone else was doing it for me.
What was hard about that for you? I mean, as you said, you had your ex, you had this other person, you had people there who were taking the roles and taking the reins away from you. But there was something about that even that was overwhelming.
Yeah, you know, I haven't figured out exactly why
mm-hmm.
it was still stressful for me. I think because I didn't want it to go wrong. You know, this was at the end of the day, like my project, something that I wanted to do for, you know, hopefully help my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that all the parts were perfect, even though someone else was managing them.
Yeah.
And yeah, the what ifs got in there. Like, oh, what if someone doesn't show up on time? Oh, what if the videographer we hired is no good? Oh, like, what if, like, I, you know, don't get my hair right on the day, and I, you know, like all these things that, like, you know, and it all went beautifully, and like it was great. And yeah, I mean, we ended up moving away from Austin a few months after that, so I never got any wedding gigs out of it, but I got a cool video.
Can we link to that video?
What was that?
Can I link to that video?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah. Wait, is it currently up on the interwebs, or are you just going to email it to me?
It is currently on YouTube.
Ooh, I'll link it to the YouTubes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, awesome. Because I think that people are going to want to see what you sound like.
Oh, well.
There's that. Maybe you'll get gigs wherever you are. But I mean, even with that, you're talking about, like, with all this stuff going on, it sounds like, as I kind of mentioned, you let your brain get in the way, which I get it, right? Our brain is there to try to figure out where all the pitfalls are in life, how our life is going to get screwed up and ruined. And the brain goes like, don't do that. Don't step in that landmine. Watch out for that monster. And sometimes we just buy into it going like, oh, my brain seems to think there's a monster here. There must be a monster here. So we freak out like there's a monster here. right? Whereas what you just told me was there were all those what ifs and all the things that were freaking you out, and yet what happened was nothing. It turned out great. Did it turn out perfect, or did it turn out just really good?
It turned out really good.
Yeah. Could it have been better?
Always, but there aren't any specific things that I'd be like, oh, I wish this would have happened, or I wish that would have happened. I wish I would have been less anxious. But at the end of the day, too, if I would have done it all, if I do it all over again, it's going to be the same thing for me.
Right.
It's like the what ifs are going to come back. It's not going to be like, oh, well, I learned last time this was fine. It was like, it's still a complex project, and there are still a million moving pieces, and there are still,
Right. And all those other parts can be broken down. Yeah. Sorry, what's that?
Oh, and so many things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And mess it all up,
I hear you. I mean, things like that are certainly overwhelming, and they are stressful. But it's it's part of that is like going, like, now that you've gone through that experience, you also know, like, when there's a ton of things going on, that's like a big trigger for you.
Yeah.
But in the future, that ought not to be a surprise. Like, you know it's coming. You got all these steps. You can just go, my brain's going to freak out about this. Actually, I don't know if I was telling you. So I was telling you I'm going to do a talk this weekend at a conference. I've done talks. We've just ran through it. I've prepped for this. One I've given before. I know I'm going to get anxious, even though this is what I do, and I'm talking on a subject that I know about. And, and my brain is always going to go, oh my God, what if I say something wrong and it screws up, or misspeak and someone misunderstands me, and they're going to go, Kevin's an idiot. He's the worst. But like, I also know that that's going to be there. And even though all those are there, I know it's going to work. I haven't said I've hurt people's feelings. I've said things confusing. I have said stuff where people go, what are you talking about? But I've also learned through that process, I can kind of roll through that. You had that experience. You had the anxiety, and the product was very good. What are the chances the next product is going to be as god-awful as your anxiety seems to think it's going to be?
Chances are low that it'll suck. Chances are high that it'll be great again, because I'm capable and I deliver. Do
you ever tell yourself that?
Yeah.
Do you buy it?
Definitely. Believing it's another thing.
Yeah.
I tell myself the right things, and then my brain's like, yeah.
Yeah, our brain's constantly trying to undermine us. Right. It's a big jerk is what it is.
Big fat jerk.
I haven't shown you this. One of my favorite books.
Oh, awesome.
So it's for those of you who are not seeing what we're seeing, it's a book called F Feelings. I'm not going to say what the real word is, but it's by Bennett and Bennett. You can look it up. It's a big book on acceptance and commitment therapy, just with a lot of profanity in it. So tell me a little bit about ADHD. How is it affecting you? How do you see it in your life? How does it rear its ugly head? And what can one do about this?
So I was diagnosed just like less than 3 years ago as an adult. And because I figured it out on my own, brought it to my therapist. It took like 3 weeks of sessions before she's like, actually, you could be dealing with this. And then I went to somewhere to get, what's it called? To have an evaluation. And they were like, yeah, you definitely have ADHD. And I was able to, start getting treatment for it. And the thing, it really was crazy because ADHD is just the way your brain's wired. And so I had lived, let's see, when was I diagnosed? It was 3 years ago. So, and I'm 35 now. I was 32. So I'd lived 32 years with this brain that I just didn't know why my brain worked the way it did in certain things. And it's really hard I can only speak for myself. It was really hard for me to accept things that I felt should be another way, Yeah. Oh, why can't I deal with this? I should be able to do that. Why can't I do that? And stress out about that and try to figure it out, but not knowing that oh, actually my brain's wired this way and no one ever told you.
Right.
Surprise. And that was what I was saying before. There are I went through a really bad identity crisis because there are so many things that I had always felt were character flaws about me.
Yeah.
That I felt like I needed to fix certain things. There are, like negative traits I don't like about myself that are holding me back in life. And I need to get through them, figure them out or whatever. And not knowing that oh, actually it's not, that my brain is wired differently and it's not my fault. And, that was like figuring out what about me is a symptom and what about me is a character trait was like really trippy. And it took a while and I'm still figuring it out, honestly, but like just understanding that like the way I handle things or approach things is not, entirely my choice. It's like just my brain's wiring has helped me so much in self-acceptance and like having grace with myself. I'm not beating myself up as much anymore because I understand this is something that I've been dealt with, and you know what, now that I understand it, I can figure out creative solutions that actually work for my brain and not try to fight it and do things the way that people say I should do them because their brains are wired their own ways, So big things for me with it. Oh, and to clarify also, I was diagnosed primarily inattentive ADHD, which previously was ADD. So I don't have hyperactivity, physically. I'm a very fatiguey person, but my brain's always going. And I hadn't realized that. I got wild puppies in my brain that I can't wrangle. And it's exhausting and I'm always tired and it's really a drag. So big things for me that I realized, were part of this were, I always had difficulty with learning and I always got great grades in school, but it was always a struggle and it was always a fight. And I, really did not like school ever. Just because it was inputting information is so difficult for me. And I would always do it and I would get A's. I would always get A's and 1B in math. But I was fighting every single day and trying really hard and I was just constantly exhausted. Because classroom setting learning is just not what my brain likes at all. And I didn't know that. And I would just be why is this so difficult for me? Why am I stressing out so much? People are just my classmates are able to do this. They're oh yeah, I'll just do that. And I'm you just do that. This is taking everything out of me. How?
Right. Right. It's almost, it'd be interesting to know what it would have been like had you received that diagnosis in high school.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have been able to understand, hey, my brain does not do best in a quiet classroom at a lecture. My brain's going to shut down a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I do much better when I started working, learning on the job. I do great with that. Show me exactly what I need to do. Go through it with me, let me see how it works and watch me do it and then say yes, that's good, sort of I do great with that. But dude, sitting at a lecture is just torture for me. I was constantly drawing in my notes just to keep myself try to keep myself attentive.
Right.
Which it's very clear now, inattentive ADHD is very hard to keep my focus on certain things for long periods of time. Boom, it's very clear now. But then I'm just beating myself up a lot. And I would get a lot of anxiety from these symptoms because I didn't understand why things were so difficult for me, and I get really anxious about it. And how do I fix this? And I don't know how to fix it. I'm so learning was a big one for me. Also, as I've already spoken about, difficulty with complex projects. Keeping all the tasks in order and following through with all the things is just a lot for me. General executive dysfunction is also a very big thing for me, because I'm tired all the time, and whatever, just like getting started on things is very difficult for me.
Right. Just making decisions.
Yeah, decision making too.
Right.
And also just like getting up and doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up and doing the thing is just like, just do the thing. And like what I mentioned, like last time we talked, it's not a matter of not wanting to do it enough. Like I'll be sitting there going like, I need to do the thing. I really want to do the thing. Like my desire is there and like my interest is there. And like, but like taking that first step is just like, I like physically can't a lot of times, which is crazy. But yeah, like having all these things, like, I would get really anxious. Like, why can't I just get up and do the thing?
Right.
Why can't I, and I would get really anxious about stuff like that.
Right.
And that's, that plays part in like my music stuff. Getting myself to practice singing.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful. I can't, the amount of time I have not practiced is just embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting myself to practice. And it's not that I want to practice. I want to get better. I want to be amazing, not just a little bit amazing. I want to be the best. And, I want to practice and get to that level, and just doing it is...
What does it take to get you there? To get you to practice?
You know what? A few things. Treatment has helped a lot. The go-to treatment for ADHD is stimulants, and that has made a ginormous difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of like calms the crazy puppies in my head, so I can do what I want to do.
Right.
And it also is like, oh, I'm able to get up and do the thing. It's not like I don't feel energy from it. Like I don't feel like, oh, I've got energy. It's just like, it's like a calm ability, I guess, if that makes sense. That I feel is like normal and standard for most people.
When you started taking medication, what sort of a change did you notice? How did you find it impacting just your thoughts, your interactions, your work?
I didn't think it was working at first. I was like, I don't feel any different. Like I was expecting myself to be like, oh, I can do everything, and, but in like working with my therapist, like I was like, I don't think it's working that well. And she goes, try it with a task. Take your meds and then start a task, and then see if it makes any difference for you, and like, being able to sustain the task, or, whatever, just try it out like that. And I did, and I think I was like filing mail or something I decided to do. And it was really interesting because I sat down, I'm like, okay, I got this pile of mail I need to go through, whatever. And there was a moment like 5 minutes in that I'm like, I need a break, I need a snack or something, I need a whatever. And then I was like, I actually don't need a snack, I don't need a break, I can keep doing this. And I was like,
that's what she was talking about.
Interest. I see. Okay. So before, I could do it for 5 minutes, and then I would either get distracted with something else, decide that I was hungry or needed a break. Like I can only sustain the focus for like a short period of time before my puppies are interested in something else in my brain, But I got through all that mail, and I'm like, this is very interesting. Okay. So it didn't necessarily, at least then, it didn't necessarily help me get started on the thing, but it helped me continue the thing. And knowing I could continue the thing helped me start things easier after that. If that makes sense.
Totally. You saw that starting something wasn't an inevitable failure or quitting or, going to be incomplete. You went, I can do this. And when you start completing stuff, it feels pretty stinking good. And you saw that you can finish it. So you can start it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was really cool.
Interesting.
I was like, ooh, I like this. I like this very much. And also my therapist was telling me that, I shouldn't necessarily feel, like I have more energy or whatever. Like it should just be like a grounding, it's like feel grounded and like able to take care of what I need to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said that I was really noticing that is how I felt. And it really calmed a lot of my anxiety, honestly. These stimulants, because like it like made the puppies behave in my brain. Oh, okay, yeah, what do I have to do? I can do it. It's not like like the puppies are just very like,
yeah. How did that affect your confidence, your self-confidence?
With treatment or before treatment?
with treatment.
With treatment, a lot more confident. I gained a lot of confidence because all of a sudden I'm like, this is something I know how to manage now.
Right.
This isn't something I feel out of control with.
Right.
And like feeling like I had like more autonomy over my brain and my body was very empowering.
Yeah.
It was really crazy. Yeah. And the terrible thing is I quickly realized that my medication broke me out. It gave me acne. And I was like, well, that's not ideal because I had struggled with acne most of my life. I figured out coffee broke me out, which was heartbreaking. And then I finally gotten a handle on my skin, and now I'm getting treated for ADHD, and this is breaking me out. I'm like, I thought this was behind us. But for a while, I was like, you know what? My brain is more important than my skin. And so I just took my meds. But my skin got bad enough that it was affecting my brain then. I'm like, well, this isn't going well. This is not going the way I want it to. So I've played around with different kinds of medication, and I'm currently on one that seems to be easier on my skin.
Great.
So it's only I've only been on it a couple months, but so far so good. I don't have the same brain effects as other ones. That I prefer the other ones for the brain effects, but if I can still be helped and I don't have to deal with the acne, I would much rather have that.
Right.
So, it's been a journey to figure out, the kind of medication that's best for me, and also like the dosage and when to take it and stuff like that. So,
and I think that's a really important point that some people on the front end of treatment or of medication don't understand or don't appreciate, is that it's not like you go to the doctor and they give you the ADHD medicine or they give you the anxiety medication. Is that there are a number of them. There are generics, there are name brand, and there are two people who are very similar will have very different reactions to them, and that just because you have some side effects doesn't mean it negates the effect. And it's that you can try one, it has side effects. Well, tell your doctor, don't just stop. You can find something that's going to work. And I also love what you said. You said, my brain was more important than my skin. It's not that your skin was unimportant. It was just you said, I'm choosing to make this more important to me, knowing your patterns of things. And I think that's really important to remember that all of those points, if someone is kind of on the fence with starting medication.
And I think one thing that I've figured out and has been a game changer for me is viewing my relationship with my, doctors and therapists also as like a partner with me in figuring out how to better myself, rather than like, oh, fix me, and then it doesn't work and then being mad about it sort of thing.
Right.
Like I've like allowed myself to be like, hey, I really like the way this is working, except for this element. Is there anything we can do about that? And be like, either tweak the dose or try a different, kind or whatever. And I would go back every single time and be like, hey, actually, I think this is great, but I think it could be even better. Does it make sense to increase the dose? I felt like I was partnering with them, like how to get my brain at like its best. And, which I didn't realize I could do before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're there to help you, and there are lots of options and combinations of stuff. Like I've ended up on a couple different things that work well together, because I'm like, oh, I'm still dealing with this thing. Does this make sense to try to address? Is there anything we can do about this? Or like this side effect isn't ideal. Is there anything we can do about that? Sort of thing. And it takes a lot of patience because you just want it to be right. And, you know, you have to try it for like at least a month at a time to like see if it's actually helping. But at the end of the day, it's so worth it. You know, I mean, I'm still figuring out my right dosages and stuff. And I got diagnosed like almost 3 years ago. So, but I'm at a way better place than I was then, just because I'm like not giving up on trying to get that, like, you know, what I feel I should be getting out of my treatment.
Right. And I mean, to say it in a different way, you had to advocate for yourself. You have to speak up. Absolutely. And I can't tell you how much as a therapist, I wish I could read people's minds and just kind of know what it is that you're thinking and feeling so I could just get on it. But it's like, if you're not telling your therapist or your psychiatrist or doctor, whoever's on your treatment team, what's going on, they don't know. If you go in and say, how's everything going? And you go, good. Like, okay, I guess. We don't know. So I love that you're willing to share that with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the thing also when I was starting to read up about inattentive ADHD and really identifying with what I was reading. I brought it to my therapist. I had taken a screenshot of something and I was like, what do you think of this? Does this sound like me? And she read it and she was like, yeah, could be. We can explore that a bit if you want. And I'm like, because I really feel like this is potentially an issue for me. And it would explain a lot of the things I've struggled with in my life. And she goes, well, you know, I have to say it's possible that you're dealing with inattentive ADHD, but I don't know if it's that or you're just really, really anxious. But let's explore it a bit. And we talked about it and she really, you know, I could tell she was like, I really just think you're an anxious person. I don't think you're really dealing with this. But I like kind of knew in my heart I had more than anxiety. And like all the things that I was reading about, like inattentive ADHD, I was like, this is making sense for me. It's making sense for me. And even though she was like, oh, I don't know, like I really push and advocate for myself to be like, let's keep talking about this because I really think there's more here. And there was like one moment that I told her, like, it's really hard for me to get motivated to, you know, do the thing, whatever the thing is. And sometimes like I will, like I stock Diet Coke in my fridge to like give me a little boost, like not for energy, but just to like actually get up and do the thing. And she goes, actually, you know, now that you say that, that makes me think that maybe you are dealing with inattentive ADHD. And like, that was the thing after like 3 weeks of like exploring it. And then after that, you know, she's like, would you be open to, you know, getting evaluated and seeking treatment? And I was like, yes, definitely. And then like, after getting evaluated, it was like, oh yeah, you're definitely. And I was like, thank goodness, you know, because I had always been the kind of person to just like trust my authority figures and just like, oh, if you say it is, you know better than me. So, okay. But like, I knew there was more. And just like getting to that, you know, point, I'm so happy I kept exploring that with my therapist, even though she was like, because I knew. And lo and behold,
there you are.
Lo and behold,
it's
here
funny.
We are now.
It's funny that, to a certain degree, that's how a former supervisor of mine suggested that I get evaluated for ADD. It's because of the amount of coffee that I drink.
Yeah.
I'll do about 4 of these.
Really?
So
you're ADD too?
Yes, I subsequently saw a psychiatrist. I haven't been on medication. I took it for a little while, then just went, I didn't notice a difference, and at the time to pay for the name brand medication, I couldn't swing it. So I just went, well, I guess this is who I am. Back to the coffee. Coffee's carrying me through. And, it would be interesting to see what it would be like to take medication. But what my psychiatrist had said at the time was, you've gone this far, you've gotten through grad school without it, and, maybe you can give it a go without. I was like, that's fine, whatever. But I also know that for some people, it can be the game changer. It can be the missing puzzle piece. So, I'm always going to be an advocate for it, just at the very least as a science experiment to see what's going to make it work.
Absolutely. I mean, there's zero harm in trying something for yourself just for your own knowledge.
Short of heroin, except for heroin.
And that's like something that I've learned for myself, oh, maybe this isn't right for me, but knowing for sure it's not right for me is valuable.
Right.
Right. So that's cool.
Hey, high five. Woo. So I mean, in the time that we have left, I'm also curious about, how are you taking steps to get back to or to continue to pursue your music?
Well, few things. Actually, it's been interesting since we talked last. I've been, thinking about, ways in which I can do more, and really, ADD brain has taken my train of thought. What was I talking about? Talking about
ways you can get back to music.
Yes, getting back to music. So thinking about how, I was talking about last time how I struggle with, the hustle, I don't do well with that. I'm scared about it, but I've always felt like, oh, I kind of have to do a hustle thing if I want to, but thinking about maybe the hustle isn't right for my brain. Maybe just going and meeting the right people, just, being in spaces where I want to be and meeting the right people. Maybe that's a start for me. That works better for my brain, is calmer for my brain, is better for my personality, because I made a friend recently who introduced me to a bar manager that he knows. And just in that 5-minute conversation, he was like, oh yeah, my friend Noel, she's a singer. And the guy was like, oh, we're thinking of adding music to our bar. What's your Instagram? And all of a sudden in 5 minutes, I've met someone who maybe I don't have to hustle. Maybe I, can just put myself in spaces where I meet the right people. And that takes the pressure off of me and the anxiety around that. And also it honors the way that my brain works better, and so allowing myself to think outside of the boxes I make for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, now, when you thought, oh man, to get to do music, I've got to hustle, what did you think hustling meant?
I think, let's see. Making sure I've got a solid online presence, or putting together the band so that I'm ready to approach, bars or places that have music and be like, hey, I'd like to sing here. Here's what I can offer, blah, 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 that sort of thing. Kind of doing that, not necessarily cold calling, but going and putting myself, asking if I can do, I'm not saying it right. Am I making any sense?
I mean, it sounds like what you're describing sounds effortful. It sounds like there's steps and things, and it's elaborate.
Yeah.
Whereas you talked about being in spaces, right? Being in spaces with other people. How could that not be described also as part of a hustle? You are doing it. But it's doing it in a way that's consistent with you. Because, man, I could imagine somebody who's like, I'm going to hustle. I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to work on my presence and I'm going to build a bonkers website and I'm going to record the best music in my house. I'm going to put it all out there on the internet. But I'm not going to go out there and talk to people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that there's an element of avoidance, though it feels like they're doing a lot of work. You are also taking steps. Do you know what I mean? So I say that as a way to not shortchange yourself, to say you're not doing the work. You're doing the work, and you're doing things that are getting you closer to that in ways that are consistent with you, and are producing something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think like realizing that and figuring out how I can do more of that is going to be my way forward. I was out last night at a burlesque performance, and I noticed there was a sign at the bar saying Tuesday night jazz jam, and I'm like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. I need to go to the jazz jams. I like took a picture and I like put it in my calendar, like gonna go to the jazz jam because that's where you meet jazz musicians. See, and that's for me much better than like, oh, I gotta find musicians. I need to put an ad out, have auditions, do this whole thing, like meeting the people and feeling their vibe out in their elements is way more my style, and that's how I found my musicians in Austin. Because there was a place to go to jazz jams once a week, but I didn't know if there was any in LA. I was like trying to Google it.
They're out there.
The audition thing, it's gonna be like, but
and that version of hustle you didn't like, whereas someone might like that, but you also back to that point of like knowing what your history is. That has been what's worked for you. So you went back to what works.
Yeah.
Great.
I just didn't think what worked before would be available for me in LA.
Okay.
I think that's my thing. Because, I've done lots of things that have worked for me in the past, but that was in London, that was in Dublin, that was in Austin, and that was almost in Bangkok. But LA is a whole different scene. It's a whole different ball game. Everyone comes here to be in the entertainment business, right? Like it's a bit more saturated. There isn't live music everywhere like there is in Austin, or Dublin, where people just like almost every other restaurant has a live singer in the corner,
Right.
It's not that here. It's different. It's a different environment. And so I think I've been overwhelmed with like, oh, the environment's different. It's like a whole new thing. I have to like do things like the right way or, this other certain way that I'm just making it more difficult for myself.
I'm hearing your brain creep in again with all the reasons why you shouldn't. But you're giving that thought the middle finger. You're doing it your way and you're taking it these steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's been really helpful for me, in talking with you last week and also just in a few of the encounters that I've had recently, with my friend who introduced me to the bar guy who was like, oh, actually, I never know when I'm going to meet these people who are thinking, oh, actually thoughts that I can get in on, and that's the way I'm going to do it happiest. Because if I just, and accepting that, like, like doing that hustle thing that I described and sounds so scary and doing the audition thing and whatever, like that's not a happy process for me.
Right.
Like even if I did do it, I would be stressed the whole way through.
Right.
I would it just,
it's all
it's
the
not
things.
something that I should be like, oh, I just need to like buckle down and do it sort of thing. Like, no, let's get creative and do it a way that makes it happy for me.
Right. And again, you know it's going to work for you. So honoring that, but continuing to be tenacious with that. It sounds like there's also the other elements of then trying to like, no, it's like, how do you start to ignore that what some people call the monkey mind? It might be like your puppies, right? How do you wrangle those little feral creatures to work for you? I think that may be one of those next steps. I know, unfortunately, in the sake of time, I'm gonna have to release you back to the wild again. But I'm wondering. At the end of all this, what if you would have any advice for somebody who's maybe in the same position as you, trying to get started in music and is kind of facing these hurdles of some anxiety and some maybe ADHD diagnosis, but they're kind of in the middle of their anxiety. What sort of things would you say to them that might be encouraging or motivating?
I'd say self-acceptance is a big thing. Like, accept that certain things are going to stress you out more than others, and that's okay. Think creatively about ways to solve your problems. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out ways to solve the things that are, I'd like to do and haven't been done yet or whatever. It's kind of a lifelong process, I think. But I think finding creative solutions is a big thing, because you can honor yourself while still doing what you want and not just being stuck at, oh, I should be able to do this, why can't I, sort of thing that I've spent most of my life stuck in, honestly, in one way or another. I think also surrounding yourself with support. I think it was huge for me when I found my vocal coach in London. She was not only super talented and a great, coach, but she also was an amazing cheerleader. And having someone in my corner,
right,
who knows how it's done and to encourage me along the way was huge. It was huge for me. Getting people in your corner and who can help you grow into the space that you want to, or the whatever you want to do. That's important, because then you'll also feel like you're not alone.
Right.
Oh, I want to do this thing, but I figure it out all by myself. You actually don't need to figure it out all by yourself. You can, there are other people who you can collaborate with, and it's way more fun that way anyway.
Right. Exactly.
And it takes the pressure off of you and figuring every little thing out,
Right.
But yeah, I'd say find creative solutions to the things that, are not happening, I guess. And find that support, I think, are the two main things. And be gentle with yourself. And again, I'm still figuring all this out. And I've been singing my whole life.
Right. It's a slow and steady process, but I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing all this, and also to hear more of your story. So so Noel, I will try to link some of your stuff, some of your Instagram account, if you're all right with that video we talked about, and other stuff. So if anybody wants to listen to that or check that out, they can go to the webpage or go to FearCast Podcast and check it out. But anyhow, Noel, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really been delightful to, I love talking about this stuff. So yes, thank you very, very much. It's been awesome.
Awesome. All right, Noel, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for making it through that episode. If you would like to be featured on a future episode of Anxiety of the Arts, go over to fearcastpodcast.com and you can let me know that you're interested, and we'll try to coordinate a time to chat about you being on a future episode. As always, if you have questions about this episode or feedback about this episode, go over to fearcastpodcast.com and send me a message over there. Again, you can send me a message over at Instagram and let me know what your thoughts were, or feedback you had, or questions you had perhaps for Noel. And I'm sure she'd be more than happy to come back on a future episode. So everybody, if you please remember that the FearCast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you have questions about treatment or need a little bit of help in your recovery, go over to fearcastpodcast.com, and there's going to be the Find Help link, and you can click on that. There's going to be some help for you there, some links and some support there. So until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.